Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. To subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast platforms, please visit us at www.thewisdomcircle.com.
Welcome to the Wisdom Circle. We are here this morning with my dear friend, Tony Ponturo, industry legend, Anheuser-Busch executive, Broadway producer, and many other things. Currently executive chairman of Echelon, which is a hospitality, sports marketing, brand consulting business, and Tom Stathakes, who I've known since 2008. We met at Comcast when regional sports networks were a very viable business. Less so today, but we'll talk about the changes as we go through the podcast today with Tom. Tom, tell us a little bit about you and your background and what's up.
Sure. So thank you for having me. Number one, it's a real pleasure, honor. I started in 1983 and I worked at KYW in Philadelphia. From 83 to 97. I was started as a production assistant and then worked my way up. I was the sports director when I left. And I got a call from Comcast out of the blue. And they said, would you come and join us and become the executive producer of a new sports regional in Philly? And that was backed by the Phillies ownership, Ed Snyder of the Flyers, and Brian Roberts. So I really had to think about it. I had been there for 14 years and I never really looked around. I just always had my head down where I was working. And then I thought about it and I went in and I said, yes, absolutely. And, I didn't know how much of a gamble it was. I look at it now and I said it was a no-brainer. But it had never happened in Philly. And I actually had interviewed with Jack Williams at the time, who was running all of, the Comcast, at least the one in Philly. And he asked me how long I thought it would take for this to be viable and successful. And I think a lot of people had gone in there and said, oh, it'll be good in a year. And I told him 3 years. I was just honest with him. I said, it's going to take 3 years, even though Philadelphia is such a robust, area for sports. And it turned out to be right. So we had a staff. We started in May and we hired 150 people and we're on the air in October. And I stayed there from that time into 2008. And then I got a call from Jeff Shell saying that they were struggling a little bit at the Golf Channel and they were looking for a head of programming, news, and operations. So I interviewed with them. I went through Jeff made me go through the process, which I thought was, I went through the recruiter. I went down and talked to Paige Thompson, Gene Pizzolato, a bunch of people. And I ended up, I knew I was going, but I ended up going there and being the head of programming, news, operations at Golf. And then I left Golf Channel and I came back after the merger with NBC. And Jeff brought me back to oversee the regionals again. And then I was a general manager in San Francisco for them. And then I left and I did some work at Telemundo with Ray. And then I went to Black News Channel and I oversaw a national morning show. And then that went bankrupt. And then I ended up at the end of the day at Altice, which I just left a couple weeks ago. And I was head of their morning show there in New Jersey and in Connecticut. So that's a really quick version of my career.
Tom, when you're so for the ignorant, which I'll put myself in that category, when you're programming a network, a station, and you're presenting content to the audience that you hope you connect with, what's some of the number one priorities you're thinking about? Is it the on-air talent? Is it how it's presented? What?
I think when we started in Philly, we wanted to be very careful because, we didn't know what the ownership group was going to be like. We didn't know if the Phillies were going to go nuts and Ed Snyder would be pissed off if we said something about the teams. Yeah. So we sort of got out in front of that really early and said, look, we're never going to be personal. But if you're not playing well, we have to say it or we'll lose all credibility. So we hired talent. In 97, we hired a couple local people from Philly. But then we hired a woman from LA, a woman from Cincinnati, and then we hired Derek Gunn out of Milwaukee and a couple other people. But they all stayed there for almost 20 years. And they became very ingrained in the community. So I think what we wanted to do at the time was be consistently good. So we did news programming, we'd cover the teams. And then we added a post-game show. Then we added a pre-game show. And then when we carried that model to Chicago and DC and Boston and the Mountain Network in San Francisco. As you know, Comcast bought out most of the Fox regionals. But what John Littner wanted to do at the time, he wanted consistency. So all the networks looked the same from Philadelphia. We started in Philly, so we did a 5 o'clock talk show. We partnered with all the newspapers. Then we would do a news show. Then we would do a pregame show. We would do a postgame show, and then we would do another news show. And all of the regionals looked the same, except with a different flavor of the talent in the market. With respect to the people, the fan bases are different. And, John Littner used to say all the time, look, in Philadelphia, it's about cheesesteaks. In Boston, it's about lobster. In Chicago, it's about deep dish pizza. So we have to respect that audience. But I want the blueprint to look the same so we can manage the budgets. And that's what I was really responsible for really overseeing most of the talent and coming up with different programming. Some that we shared. We did some NFL programming that aired, as Ray knows, and aired in all the markets. At the same time, we would do it live. But most of the stuff is really narrow focused into the, to the local region. And, it turned, I think we're really proud of it. I think it did really well. And, obviously it's changed dramatically in what things look like. But I think, the whole group, John and Bob Ayers and Amy and John Salak, and I think Ray, obviously, John Ruth, we built a really pretty robust business that made a lot of money at the time, and we had good partnerships.
Yeah, it kind of was maybe the harbinger, they call the canary in the coal mine, right? Like the regionals started to fall apart. We were there. It was the OCF darling of Comcast. There was no part of their content business that made more money. And cable cutting, cord cutting, all that stuff, excessive rights fees, all the things that are still going on have really turned the regional sports network business into kind of a difficult spot to be in. And it's kind of spread when you think about it, right? Because all of the networks and all of the cable channels kind of brings us to the Warner Brothers Discovery / Netflix / Paramount discussions. The changes are just continuing and will. And I think that might have been one of the starts, because one of the things we used to say was that no one can get between a fan and their team if you live in Boston or St. Louis or Philadelphia. And money kind of got between them. So it's changing. Tony, what are you thinking about the Warner Brothers? And then we'll ask Tom, but I'll go to you first, give our guest a chance to.
Well, my overall concern in observing media and sports in general is, private equity money. So dollars are going to start controlling the business. And the question is, how educated are these people, being somewhat candid, on the business that they're buying? And so will they let the Toms of the world do their job? The one thing that at Anheuser-Busch, we had a CEO, August Busch, who really understood that media and sports was not a commodity, was not like buying rice and corn and aluminum and hops and everything. And he had to let the people who he paid to do the job do the job. Now, that didn't mean we didn't have accountability. We had a lot of accountability. So it's going to be interesting to see the priority, because, they're using their money, other people's money of fun to buy these things. And then how does it all work? And the customer now, we're seeing too much behind the scenes. So one of the things that really bothers me, is sort of a tangent of Ray's question, is how, even the game last night, the Atlanta Falcons, and I say last night, so I've now dated our podcast, against the Bucs. There's already people thinking that it's a conspiracy. This betting has really become, every game, every last minute field goal, the game, that the Raiders played, a couple of weeks ago where they, against the Broncos, where they beat the spread at the last minute, even though they were down by 10. It's just become a whole big mess. So I'm concerned, bottom line, I'm concerned about quality, letting the people run the business who know the business. And, if it gets too financially bottom line oriented, you know, it's going to be interesting to watch. So, Ray, you went mute, or we can't hear you, or I can't hear you.
When little Queenie barks, the whole world listens. So I
Okay.
I put it on mute. Thanks for reminding me.
So I know I just answered 6 questions. It only asked me one, but we're going through a very big transition. Let's put it that way.
No, there's a lot. I guess the new word, to unpack there. But I don't know if it was you I had this conversation with or someone else about. I bought into the conspiracy theory a little bit too. Why are these games all so close? And the more you read about the head coach in Michigan and, the NBA players throwing games and baseball players throwing balls in the dirt 10 feet in front of, please. So, man, it's getting ugly. And that's going to be a terrible time. Although, if you hear the way people talk about sports and the youth, snackable, they don't care. And they may not care at all in 20 years. I don't know. Tom, love to get your thoughts.
I'm so glad you brought up the betting part of that, because that's all, when you look at it, that's a couple weeks ago when that betting scandal happened with the NBA players, why ESPN was doing their morning show. Underneath on the bottom line was bet ESPN and bet on DraftKings. In the middle of that story, which they were crying over how terrible it was, why they're promoting betting as it goes. And they dropped it. Somebody was smart enough to notice what happened, and they took it off. But that's not going away. And I think it's going to be a very dangerous thing. I mean, you have kids 19, 20 years old joining leagues. They're going to eliminate prop bets. I have no doubt about that, at least in the NBA, where a guy can check in a game for a minute and it counts, then pull himself out because it says his foot hurts and his cousin bet $20,000 on it. These aren't sophisticated gamblers. I mean, they're right out there in the open. Those two pitchers that threw those balls, their clients or their people that were in on the inside made $400,000, I think. They made 12. Yeah. And they ruined their careers. And right. I think it's going to be the tip of the iceberg. I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's going to be like the NBA referee scandal is huge and it sort of got swept under a little bit. I mean, it gained a lot of traction, but not really. But I think there's going to be a college
they thought it was like a dirty ref,
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's going to happen because it's human nature. When you have this much money being gambled all the time, and it is unbelievable. I mean, when you look at the playoff games for the college, they lay the spread out already. It's changing. It's a major force, and they're paying a lot of money for it. I do think it's a great business, but I also think there's going to be a disaster here down the road.
I think the business used to be Tony and I'd be sitting at a bar, and we'd say, "Who do you think's going to win? I'll bet you $20. Chargers win." I'd take the $20 out of my pocket. I'd buy him a drink, or I'd give him a $20 bill. All the Premier League, all the European betting that everybody saw is like, oh my God. It started out as just cash. And then, of course, digitization brought it into do it on your phone. One of the things I think about are, again, the youth and where are they getting the money? Is it mom and dad's credit card? Is it their trust fund? Is it their $12 an hour driving an Amazon truck? And now they can't. I mean, it's a dark hole. I don't know if we need to go all the way down today.
No, but it's a fun thing, right? But I think they're going to have to regulate it a little bit more. I do think they're going to stop prop bets. But I remember the first time I ever went to Veterans Stadium. I think I was in 8th grade, and my best friend at the time, his dad took me to the game, and then we went to a few games. And one day I said to him, "Hey, why is your dad always on the payphone before the game starts? Like, what is that about?" And he goes, "Oh, he has a guy places bets for him before the game." And that was in, the 70s, late 70s. That's how it used to be. Now, I mean, anybody, you can get on that. Everybody, I don't care what newsroom you're in. I don't care what business you're in. If you run a bagel shop, when you walk in there, everybody's talking about what happened the night before or what's going to happen that day because everybody is betting.
Yeah. We lost your audio, Tom, but it might come back soon.
Okay.
Tony, why don't you close out the conversation on betting, and we'll pick another topic.
I was actually going to take one step back, but I can, I'll answer three questions at once. You guys were actually at the spear of how some of this started, in the sense of money buying creative assets called Comcast. Comcast was basically a cable operator, right? Buys NBC. A good friend of mine, maybe not you guys, Dick Ebersol, was an empowered head of sports. Obviously, how he did business did not fit how Comcast wanted to run business, and then he was no longer there. And what's interesting is the personalities like Roone Arledge and Dick Ebersol and people like that don't exist anymore, because it's corporate, fall in line, be a good, and that may be good business. You guys were there, you can tell me, but that was the beginning of money. I'll call it money, corporate, saying, we're going to run the business this way, and you creatives have to fall in line. So what do you guys think of that?
I don't think executive producers anymore have that much power. I mean, the stuff that we did at Golf Channel early, signing David Ferrity, doing Charles Barkley's show, doing some documentaries, we made those decisions in-house. And Jeff Shell and Brian Roberts were unbelievable about that. You make your decision, you're running programming. We'd have to go through the lawyers to make sure the contracts were signed. But now you can't do anything without running it by 10 people, 10, 12 people. And I worked with Dick, when that merger first happened. I spent quite a bit of time with Dick, and there's two things I was fascinated by. His staff was incredibly loyal to him. Like, unbelievably. He was powerful. And if you were inside that circle, you were powerful. And it didn't really matter who you were. You could be a graphics guy, but if Dick loved you, you're running the ship. It's just not that way anymore. It's just not. And it's just too much things you have to go through. But, I don't know whether it's better or worse. I just know there's a lot of money involved. So the more money is involved, the more people involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tony, I agree with you. I mean, I know we don't like doing the dating thing about how far back we go, but the 84 Olympics were bought for $90 million by ABC. And the ABC Sports Group bought the Calgary Olympics 4 years later for $309 million. Because Roone Arledge just wanted to keep producing the Olympics. It goes back to Dick, and you could go to any of that grand group. I mean, it's like a Mount Rushmore if you went through all the networks. But, Cap Cities was the first to say, okay, then and they have not been in the Olympics since Calgary 1988. So everybody it's all gone to the corporate group. And, the guys who are running the divisions now, and them all, Tony, I know most of them. And Tom, I'm sure you do too. They're just not all that worried about creative,
No,
because everything kind of looks the same, right? Tom, what do you think about?
They're worried about it if they're worried about it, if it hinders them from selling. But if they can make money, it doesn't really matter what they're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But to go back to gambling, I mean, it's funny because and I wish I had it, but I don't. When I graduated from Villanova with an economics degree, my senior paper in 1974 was states should legalize sports gambling.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was either stupid or ahead of the curve, but it was like, how do you bring in revenue, right? In a controlled manner. Don't know where the paper is, and I don't know what the grade was. But the other thing, the AV days was, there was, stories and stuff on gambling. It's like the minute the credibility, and Tom, you sort of hinted to that, we may be walking that line. The minute the credibility of the game, and Ray, I think you mentioned this as well, is jeopardized, the house of cards is going to fall down. And unfortunately in business and in sports, we wait till it crumbles until we try to fix it. There's a great thing in leadership is that, you're supposed to look around the corner to see what's happening and fix it before it hits you in the face. And there's such a greed mentality in sports right now. I mean, I'll underline that 3 times, that everything's driven by more revenue to organizations that are already rich as it is. that they're not looking at the quality, the image. What are we trying to be in 5 years from now? It's like, can we make another buck? That's the decision we're going to make, and it will backfire. It's going to backfire.
I agree with that 100%. And I think it's the same thing with the movie business, and it's the same thing in sports. I mean, you can't find half the stuff you want to look for. Like, people don't even know what movies are out because you don't know where to find them. And you only get it through word of mouth. And I think the same thing's going to happen with sports. Now they have, Amazon has soccer, and everybody knows what the NFL Thursday night. Now there's Friday. Now there's Saturday. Some are on Netflix. It's difficult to keep track of, and I think they're going to burn themselves. I do, because it's costing more money. If you want to watch all this, you just might as well have a cable bill, because it's all adding up.
Well, that's exactly the point of what all these subscriptions wind up costing. But I want to go back, because I think I might disagree with you a little bit, Tom, that the analogy over to the entertainment side, it's hard to lose credibility in the entertainment side, like good director, good movie. I think what Tony's talking about is, the one thing about sports is the purity of what the game used to be. And I think that the commissioners have allowed, it's greed, Tony, but it's more than that. It's owners who can't control themselves. They're these rich guys who want to be able to say their team won a championship or whatever, and they will just pay. I think the guy who made $12,000 pitching, Tom, he had like a $40 million 5-year contract, or
one
8
of the
years.
guys, a really good. The starting pitcher was a good pitcher.
Yeah, so it's like and so it just becomes yes, greed is at the heart of it all. It's the owner's greed, it's the commissioner's greed, it's the player's greed, and when you said, I guess what I was thinking is it's not sport. America our capitalism drives almost everything into the ground, like right. Hershey makes a good chocolate bar, and now there's 37 chocolate bars. And now they're paying. So it's like I talk about that with Anheuser-Busch. How did you guys, because right now, what the hell is InBev? I have no idea. They have 47 brands. They have, I don't know. But Anheuser-Busch, you knew what you were getting. And I know, tell me about that.
Well, it's
the viewers and Tom.
It's exactly what we're talking about. Anheuser-Busch, which was started as a microbrew, right, in St. Louis, Missouri, became a public company in the mid to late 70s, was then bought by private equity. InBev is 3G Capital. It's a private equity Brazilian company that's bought, General Foods and Kraft and Tim Hortons and Burger King and whatever since AB.
Wow.
And so the same mentality exists. Private equity people are not marketers. I don't think they pretend to be marketers. I don't think they would argue with that comment for too long. Anheuser-Busch just mentioned they're now closing 3 breweries, including the Newark Brewery, which is a famous brewery across from the airport with the famous A and Eagle flying. And the reason is because their volume is down. They're down 20 to 25% market share from when they bought it. If you lose your volume, and the alcohol business is changing, you don't need those breweries, and thus they're going to close 3 breweries. The point being is, rather than focus on how do we keep the momentum of marketing and image that Anheuser-Busch had and a 50 market share going, but their first 18 months was, how do we take $200 million out of this company, right? Let's lay off people. Let's cut costs. Let's tear up executive offices. Let's do whatever else they did. And guess what? The consumer picks up on that, and you lose volume. Notwithstanding, as we talked already on this podcast, the Bud Light situation. But so that's what I'm concerned about. So having watched it, because I left when that takeover took place, that's what I get concerned about sports, because you're not worrying about there's no fiscal responsibility. I did a LinkedIn post on this with college coaches. So we look at LSU. It's like, or just take the Giants for a second. Okay. As for example, I don't know Brian Daboll. I don't. So Brian Daboll's an assistant coach, right? He's an offensive coordinator for the Bills. The Giants go and pay someone. Think if this happened in business. Someone who's never been an assistant coach, and they give him whatever it was, a 5-year contract for X, millions of dollars. He's never proven he's a head coach. But the team, and this all over the place, gives someone, okay, we're going to trust you can actually feel. It's like saying to Ray or to Tom, you've never been CEO. Well, Ray has, but we're going to make you CEO of Comcast, and we're going to pay you all this money unproven. It's just sort of ridiculous. So now it's like, okay, Brian Daboll's gone now 2 years into his contract, but we still have to pay him all this money. It's just wasted money. LSU has $150 million on the books for coaches. And it's almost like they don't care because the boosters and everybody else is giving them money to continue to fail again. Yeah. So it's all this, what's the objective? The objective is we need to win a championship. We need to be prideful. We need to be the best, rather than what happened to building something organically. Mick Ultra was an idea of August Bush III to say the baby boomers will stop drinking the amount of liquid of beer when they get older. So I'm going to build a product. He was the brand manager. He was the brewmaster. He was everything. I'm going to make a brand called Mick Ultra, which is low on carbs, low on alcohol, low on calories. And we're going to promote it as someone who's interested in lifestyle the whole bit. One person's idea, organic, strategic. Today, that brand is the number one beer brand for Anheuser-Busch. Just think if that had not been, and it was not invented
not
by
popular.
any brand team, any other strategy person at AB. It was invented by the CEO who had the vision to see it. So you have to say, is there a vision? Is there a strategy? Is there quality control? Is there, where are we taking this other than who's going to give us another buck? Now, I know this is a big rant, but you're just seeing all this wasted money going on. And it's like, wow, who's going to start getting measured for a bottom line?
There is none, in some places. So I get it. And we could talk about the greed in college football and what a mess that is. So, I don't know. I guess that could just be like a cranky bunch of guys bitching about sports. So, but it's all over.
No, I'm gonna. We're influencers in the business, right? I'm going to stop you right there. I just got ranked the 125 of influential people for 25 years. Our voice is important. History is a way to see the future. We're not old voices. We are current voices with experience that many people don't have.
Oh, I feel so much younger now. Thank you.
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, there's not enough people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
There just aren't. And they have positions of power that they should not be in. And we've been in these positions, and I don't think you ever take it for granted. And some of these companies, I've never seen a situation like, no matter what, you might disagree with something John Littner said, or you didn't necessarily agree with maybe something Brian was going to do, but they respected their employees and they listened. You could engage with no problem whatsoever. We engaged all the time in our meetings with Ray and John. We always did, with a lot of good people in that room.
Like we're doing now.
Yeah, it's not that way anymore. You have people that are in positions that shouldn't be in their positions, and they only surround themselves with people that want to hear them. And the people that want to, they hear from, are people that are afraid they're going to lose their jobs, so they say whatever you want to say. Where we would debate and argue all the time with respect for one another. And I think that, in a way, that's lost. And I don't think we're old at all, and I think we're valuable.
I didn't mean to insult all of us. I'm one of us.
No, it's a very important thing because I
think so. You're right. I mean, you've talked about that before, Tony, that there isn't enough respect and listening to the gray hair and the value that experience brings. Everybody's trying to do something digitally or with somebody else's money. They haven't built a career. So, I mean, I get it. I just was trying to kind of move us more towards other topics.
It's a good conversation, and I'm beating up on my buddy here. But just the fact that you say the gray hair is a negative connotation. It's like it's listening to the experience of somebody. Young people don't care because I work with them. I have people now at Echelon. They want to learn from the next generation of people. It's that people don't know how to talk to them, right? Or they, they know how old you are roughly because they look at you, but they don't want to hear that. Let me learn from you. I may not accept everything, but let me learn from you. And I think it's bad for our generation, and Ray's heard this from me, to play this, we're too old, we got gray hair, bullshit. Pardon my French. We got experience, and that can be shared with people.
Mm-hmm. That staff I just had in Connecticut was younger, on the younger side. There were some, people that were our age, a little younger, but those people wanted to soak it up. Now, some did not. Some didn't want to hear it. The idea of being on time, sort of a theory, not exactly something you have to do. And but you quickly realize, all right, there's some people here. Here are the 10 people you're going to surround yourself with that want to learn and want to be really good and are really smart. And you just got to hope they outshine the people that don't give a shit.
Right.
And that's how I would manage that.
Yeah. Well, that's how you grow. That's how people have grown in their careers, right?
Yeah.
No, it's great conversation. Great conversation. I don't know how you get wisdom and experience without having some gray hair, but I can tell it's a hot button. So I'm just going to say.
No, but that's not the way to describe people. That's a negative connotation.
Yeah.
It's like you
I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
Someone's bald. Well, he's bald, so I guess he's smart. It's like, why have to?
No, the only negative. No, I'm going to push back.
Yeah, no,
I don't
that's
think saying somebody's got gray hair is a negative conversation. I think or a negative connotation. I think it's respect, and I think it's earned, and I think it's something to be proud of, not something to deny. I think the only place that there's ever room for you get away with a little bit more. We always wanted to put a guy with an English accent up when we were pitching new business at CARA or OMD because people with a British accent sound smarter. But I'm not. I don't think it's. I disagree. I don't think it's a negative connotation. I think it's, hey man, that helps me understand why I want to respect you and understand you and listen to you and learn from you. If you look like me, everything's about presentation. It's great if you act like me and we have a great time. We go out for a beer, whatever. But, I want to know that the guy who's teaching me stuff has some background, not he's somebody's kid or came in through a side door or whatever. So agree to disagree. We love that.
Take us to the next
time. So, Tom, tell us about Altice. They bought Cablevision. We've all been bought by somebody, right? ABC was bought by Cap Cities when I was there. Tony was bought by InBev when he was at AB. The NBC guys, although bought by Comcast, acted like, they bought us. We had to keep reminding them that they had a very bad business and we bought it. So Altice bought Cablevision. What was that like? Because you never hear anything about them.
I sort of got, I came into Connecticut a couple of years after Altice bought Cablevision, and basically, at least in Connecticut, they came in, and that was a robust network, really popular in Connecticut, really well respected, and they gutted it. Basically, they took a ton of people out, and now they're hubbing, like they're doing Connecticut news out of New Jersey, and they take one of the best anchors in the entire company off the air. And then they have, producers moving, weather people moving, and they're hyping themselves. And I was very grateful to be there. I learned a lot and I gave a lot. But the idea of hyper local and you're not doing your news from where you live and everything makes no sense. Right. And it's to save money. And I get it. But it doesn't work. You have to change your business model. And they, out of any place I've worked, I learned some things from there. But one of the things, if you're in upper management and you really don't care how you're treating people at the end of the day, from the lowest person to anybody else inside of those companies, that's just a losing proposition because, we work for people. You could say whatever you want, as I said before, about Jack Williams, John Littner, Brian Roberts, Jeff Shell. They care about they want to make money and they want ROI and they want accountability, but they want to hear differentiated voices. And you could talk and if you didn't get your point and you didn't get what you wanted, you had respect for them and you move on. I think the idea that they would literally just tell people you don't matter. Doesn't matter. We'll move on. And I had never seen that before. Not to the extent there. Right. And there's a lot of good people there. My gosh, there's so many good people. Connecticut, New Jersey, Bronx. And, I hope this works for them, what they're trying to do. But there's a lot of collateral damage before anybody knows that.
Well, it is what's happened everywhere, I guess, when you think about it. We've all been through it. Everybody's been through it. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the Tom Stathakes journey. You gave us like the data points, I started at W and blah, blah, blah. What was the, because a lot of our audience is on the younger side and a lot of them want to hear from the experience and the value that those of us who've been around, I won't use any other term, bring to the table. But as you were moving through your career, what was in your mind like the any regret on something you didn't do or anything that just turned out way better than you thought?
Well, the regional business, I was never business savvy when I started, right? I was more in very granular, we're going to take over the world, and I wasn't a business person whatsoever. So, and I did that for 9 years. I mean, I traveled all over the place to all these markets and oversaw the programming and dealt very strategically with all the GMs. And then when Jeff asked me to go to golf, I went in there and I had no idea. It's a national network. It was really on Brian's radar, a lot of people's radar. And I remember before I went in, Jeff had said, look, you're going to have to make significant change there. We're really struggling. And this is before the merger, before Dick and Mike and those guys came in. So I had to go up and see Brian, and I'll never forget what he said to me. And I had so much respect and love for him. He said that he looked right at me and said, I know what you and Jeff talked about. You're going to have to make significant changes. And I said, yes. And he said, how long have you been watching him? I said, for a little while. I have a pretty good bead, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to learn more. And he said, you're going to do me a favor. He said, every one of those people you let go, you're going to give them as much severance as you can. I don't care about the money, because he said there was a year, every Friday, we didn't know if we were going to make payroll, and nobody quit on me. So you take care of them. You pay their severance, you pay their bonuses, and treat them right when they walk out the door. I don't think that happens today in most places.
Well, that was Brian Roberts, just for those of our listeners.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I never forgot that. And I was like, wow. And then, and I think accountability, I think for me, it's like, just be on time and be accountable. And, when at KYW, they had a new news director came in. His name was Randy Covington. It's the first time I ever sat there, and I was really young. I think it was a PA at the time. And he would do post-show meetings. And he was always nice about it. But he'd say, hey, how do we go to Blackmail? And who wrote that? And it wasn't like this pointing finger, but he made people accountable. And I learned a lot from that. So every place I've been, I do post-show meetings because of that, and try to have the same demeanor. At Altice, I would talk to the producers at 3:30 in the morning, at 3:30 sharp. I would do that. And then we'd have a post-show meeting. And I sort of took that where I was stationed throughout my career. And I think it's just having respect for your employees, and it's kind of cliche, but you have to meet your employees where they are. And I always viewed that I work for them just as much as they work for me, because for me, I couldn't do it any other way. Because if you can't just talk when they mess up, right?
Right.
They do something great, you buy them a 6-pack of beer, and then when they mess up, you can say, hey, that really was not really. And that's always been my philosophy, and I sort of kept it that way. But
I think that's exactly, and it's great because I can ask Tony a good question. Unless you have one, Tony, for Tom. But I wanted to ask you, because Tom just explained, I think, our philosophy of how you work and how our companies back in the day worked and how today, not so much. So you're now executive chairman of Echelon, and you referenced in our little fun back and forth, people want to hear from you, people want to learn. Tell us about that. Tell us about the people that you're now in meetings with who are seeing you and how they're behaving and how the company is trying to either bring that to them, because I don't know if Echelon's PE or if it's just one guy who's got a lot of money or whatever, but I'd love to hear what you're now seeing out of that generation that we were and or led. Are they different? Are they the same? What's the deal?
No, I think what I'm learning and is a couple things, and from the two co-heads all the way down to the team members, if you will, is I find this group, which is why I was so driven to them, really open to want to learn. Right?
Mm.
It wasn't. It wasn't like, and I've run into people like this. I know it all. I don't really need your help, kind of thing.
Right.
And this group really wants to listen. And I think one of the reasons also is that, and it's been fed back to me, which is a little awkward if they hear the podcast, is that they see that I listen. That it's like, it's not,
important.
Hey, this is how you should do it because I know best. It's, did you think of this? Even with the co-heads, it's like, hey, did you think of this? Or here's a perspective you may want to think about. And when I taught leadership at NYU, and you read 20 books on leadership, one of the things that popped out at me, among many things, was it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Right. And so they feel welcome and they feel heard and they feel comfortable. One young person said, Tony's fun. So in other words, so you have an executive chairman that they feel comfortable talking to. It's not an executive chairman who's looking down on them like, and that's why I get so sensitive to these things, because it's how you deal with people and making them feel comfortable. And we all have done it. It's sort of a weird analogy, but your assistant or whatever says, someone's on the phone, you go, oh my God, I don't want to talk to this person because they're laborious, or Ray Warren's on the phone and you pick up right away. So we all are presenting ourselves as, are we user friendly? Are we sensitive? Are we warm and fuzzy? And in the meantime, can I learn from them? And that's the key. And that's what I'm experiencing. And one of the things we've heard from Tom and is, those that are embracing, like Jeff Shell and Brian Roberts and others, and those that are not. Nick Saban has a great line that I just saw actually on Instagram this morning over my coffee. Mediocre people do not like high achievers. And I used to say it a different way, is the troops, sort of the person that's trying to get ahead and do things. It's like they want to pull, hey, no, you're part of us. Don't go and be a part of the expression kiss ass. Be a part of us, because they know, sadly, that they're going to be down here because that's where they're at in their head. And they want to keep everyone down here, and they don't like the high achievers.
What do people say? Good gets better, bad gets worse. And it's totally true. And people
and the
do
really
not
good
change.
people, Tom, are the ones that are embracing and realize that the people will only make them as good as they are. I can tell that this is a little personal, but I've gotten so many congratulations on this recent recognition. People I work with pretty closely, I haven't heard from. So it tells you, and I don't need, it just tells you where they're at. It's an interesting thing. So people are, we're all transparent in many ways. So it's sort of interesting how you go about things. Anyway, I think I always ramble a little bit.
That's why we love you. So we're past the 40-minute mark. We're going to try to do a close here over the next few minutes. I'll do one little thing, and then Tom, would love you to just, maybe chime in on what you're thinking about in terms of where the industry is. But the thing about the gray hair, I think it depends who's under the gray hair. I think we're all like common sense, down to earth. We don't use it. It's us. We're real. There are guys out there who use that gray hair as a weapon. I've been around longer, I'm smarter, and they don't listen. And the people lose respect, and then they don't do anything. So I love this whole idea. This could be like another podcast where Tony and I do a little point counterpoint. But it's a thing because we've talked about it a lot, and and I agree with Tony almost across the board. So anyway, I think it's been really fun. I love this conversation, Tom. It's been really great having you. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm trying to
what's
figure out
what's the next step for Tom?
I'm going to deal with that after the holidays. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Some production companies have reached out. There's a lot of change in the landscape with Paramount, Warner Brothers, CNN. So I'm going to enjoy the holidays. But, it's funny we talk about, I have a 19-year-old daughter. So I made her get out of bed this morning. She's with me in Connecticut for another 5-6 days. I said, I need you to come downstairs with me. She said, why? And I said, I got to make sure technological wise, I can get this podcast up. And she rolls her eyes and she goes, oh my God, how are you ever successful? And she and she said on my phone. And I said, look, that's not my thing. So I just want to make sure. Right. People say, are you going to retire? No, I'm not even close. I don't know what you would do with yourself. I want to work for at least 5 more years. And I might even go longer than that. I love the business. Yeah. I love the people. I talk to former staff members from golf. And I talk to the Altice people almost every day in some form or fashion, and the regional business clearly. And I like doing it. And, and they put things back. I love the business. I love what we're doing, even though with the challenges of everything that's happening. The bottom line is you need good content. If you have good content, people should be able to find you. But you have to have good content. And, there's overload with tons of shit that's on TV. But good content, people tend to find.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you this. The one thing I learned, Tony, I don't know if you ever used the word retired. I think you did. There's a point where you, like when I was on you never did? So when I was closer, I was older than Tony when he retired. Thank you, in bed.
I didn't retire.
Yeah.
If you're doing Broadway shows and you're teaching and you're consulting, you're not retired.
So when he stepped away from the media business, he went off to another place.
When I left Anheuser-Busch, why don't you say that?
Why don't you just tell me what to say? I need you to type in, and I'll just read Tony's thoughts. The point I was trying to make, and I'm sorry that I put anything on Tony. I never should do that. I will take it and say that prior to leaving Telemundo and NBC and Comcast, I liked the word retirement. I was tired. I'd been traveling around the world for 7 years, and I was ready to go. And once I retired, I said, I don't want to use the word retire. So Tom, from the two guys who've been around a little bit longer, take the word retirement. And when people say retire, and you're saying that I'm not going to retire, good. I think that's really positive.
Yeah,
I think it was a problem for me.
A little bit, they see you in the gray hair, and it's how you act, how you feel, right? I don't.
It's not what you say to people. It's how you make them
act. 65. My young one keeps me, moving. My staffs keep me moving, and you have to keep your brain moving. I can't. Exactly. What are you gonna? I'm not playing golf every day. I would go out of my mind.
God,
and I'm a voracious reader, so I keep up with what's happening, and I'll be. I'm looking forward to my next move. So.
Yep. Well, good. Well, Tony, I'm sure you have 100 things to do. So, you have any final?
No, just thank you, Tom. We had a lively conversation. We've talked about being a little bit more lively and pointed, so that the the podcast doesn't get stale. So I think we made a step in that direction. And thank you for providing your insight and background as well.
No, thank you so much. When Ray asked, and Tony, we've never met. I know you are, and so I'm grateful. So thank you.
No, it's our pleasure.
Tom makes great content, even when he's not trying. Even when he's a guest on a podcast, Tom makes content better. So
I'll have to watch that back. Make sure I didn't hurt myself.
No, you did great. And Tony and I, we've been around together too long. I mean, it's just, God knows, we've bounced off each other more than once, and sometimes across the table full of spaghetti and sometimes across Hilton Head to Stewart, Florida. So thanks for being there. We hope everybody enjoyed our podcast.